The year was 1942. The streets of Lyon, France, were filled with fear. Nazi banners hung from every balcony. The Gestapo's black cars prowled the cobblestone alleys, their sirens cutting through the night. And pasted across the city walls were hundreds of wanted posters, each showing the same woman's face-sharp features, dark hair, and one haunting phrase written in bold black ink: La Dame Qui Boite, the Limping Lady. The woman on that poster wasn't a French citizen. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't even European. She was an American, an outsider, a woman with a wooden leg who had become the most dangerous spy in all of occupied France. Her name was Virginia Hall. To the Gestapo, she was a phantom, a master of disguise who always vanished seconds before they arrived. To the Allies, she was the unseen architect of the French resistance. But just a few years earlier, she'd been told she wasn't even fit to serve her country. Rejected, dismissed, forgotten. And yet, against every odd, Virginia Hall would go on to humiliate Hitler's secret police and change the course of the war. Virginia Hall was born in Baltimore in 1906 to a wealthy family that believed in tradition. Her mother, Barbara, dreamed of high society marriages and quiet domestic life for her daughter. Her father, Edwin, was a banker, practical, proud, and indulgent of his daughter's wild spirit. But Virginia had something restless inside her. She wasn't interested in dances or debutante balls. She preferred mud to makeup, rifles to ribbons. She rode horses, hunted ducks, and climbed trees. In her 1924 high school yearbook, she wrote a single line that would foreshadow her destiny: "I must have liberty." That craving for freedom led her across the Atlantic to study languages in Europe. First in France, then Austria. She fell in love with the noise of Paris cafes, with art, jazz, and the promise that she could be anything she wanted to be. Her dream was to join the U.S. Foreign Service, to travel the world as a diplomat. But that world wasn't ready for women like her. When she took the entrance exam, the State Department rejected her application. Not because she failed, but because she was female. Still, Virginia refused to give up. She took clerical work at American embassies across Europe, Poland, Turkey, Italy, waiting for a chance to prove herself. Then fate struck. In December 1933, during a hunting trip in Turkey, Virginia slipped while climbing a fence. Her shotgun discharged. The blast tore through her left foot. 3 weeks later, gangrene set in. On Christmas Day, doctors amputated her leg below the knee. For most people, that would have been the end. But not for Virginia Hall. She learned to walk again using a heavy wooden prosthetic she nicknamed Cuthbert. The stump ached, the pain never left. But neither did her determination. When she reapplied to the State Department, they told her bluntly, "A woman with a wooden leg cannot represent the United States abroad." That rejection burned deep, and it lit a fire in her that would one day bring down an empire. When Germany invaded Poland in 1939, Virginia was stationed in Estonia. She watched from the sidelines as Europe fell into chaos. Her clerical desk job felt meaningless. So she quit. She traveled to France, volunteering as an ambulance driver. She carted wounded soldiers from the front lines while German planes bombed the roads around her. When France fell in 1940, Virginia narrowly escaped. She fled south into the unoccupied zone, Vichy, France, swearing to return one day and help free the country she had grown to love. That opportunity came unexpectedly. At a crowded train station in Spain, she met a man who claimed to be a traveling salesman. In truth, he was a British intelligence officer named George Bellows. During their brief conversation, she told him about her work, her languages, her knowledge of France, and her fury at watching fascism consume Europe. Bellows handed her a slip of paper. "If you really want to fight the Nazis, He said, "Call this number when you get to London." That phone number led her to the Special Operations Executive, the SOE, a secret British spy organization created by Winston Churchill himself to, in his words, set Europe ablaze. The SOE recruited men and women for sabotage, resistance, and espionage behind enemy lines, and despite her missing leg, Virginia Hall, fluent in French, calm under pressure, and fearless, was exactly what they needed. In 1941, after a crash course in codes, radio work, explosives, and disguise, she received her first mission: infiltrate Vichy, France, under the cover of a journalist for the New York Post. Her objective: build an underground resistance network capable of disrupting Nazi operations from within. Virginia arrived in Lyon, France, in August 1941. The city was tense. A maze of German officers, Vichy police, and secret informants. But Virginia quickly went to work. Using her journalistic cover, she met local officials, business owners, and sympathetic citizens. Her charm was disarming, her American accent unexpected, and her limp, ironically, her greatest disguise. No one suspected a disabled woman of being a spy. Slowly, she built a network of contacts: smugglers, doctors, resistance fighters, and even a brothel owner who used her business to gather intelligence from German soldiers. Her network became known by the codename Heckler. Through secret channels, she smuggled weapons, forged documents, and rescued downed Allied pilots, hiding them in safe houses, shepherding them through the Pyrenees, and sending coded updates back to London. She organized sabotage missions, spread anti-German propaganda, and built connections across southern France, all while maintaining her cover as a harmless American journalist. By late 1941, the Gestapo had begun to take notice. Reports circulated of a mysterious woman, foreign, with a limp, orchestrating resistance activity across Lyon. They called her the Limping Lady. To them, she was a phantom. To her agents, she was Marie. Her greatest victory came in 1942 with the Mauzac prison break. 12 captured SOE operatives were being held in a high-security camp in southwestern France. Virginia orchestrated their escape using bribery, forged letters, and a priest who smuggled in a radio under his cassock. She arranged safe houses, guides, and transport. Every detail of their getaway. On the night of July 15, under cover of darkness, all 12 men crawled beneath the camp's barbed wire and disappeared into the countryside. Every one of them made it to safety. The Gestapo was furious. Their retaliation was swift: mass arrests, torture, and public executions. But the Limping Lady had slipped through their fingers again. For a time, Virginia's network flourished. But spies know that luck never lasts. A double agent, a priest named Robert Alesh, infiltrated her group and began feeding information to the Nazis. Within weeks, the Gestapo raided safe houses and arrested dozens of her allies. Her communications were compromised. Virginia knew her time was running out. When Germany invaded Vichy, France in November 1942, the net around her tightened. The Gestapo knew her codename. They knew her face. They just didn't know where she was. Yet. Virginia gathered her money, fake papers, and her radio set. She boarded a train headed south, then continued on foot toward the Pyrenees Mountains, her only route out of France. For 3 days she climbed through snow, cold, and exhaustion. Her prosthetic leg rubbed her raw, every step agony. She radioed London halfway through the journey, saying, "Cuthbert is giving me trouble, but I can cope." Her handler, misunderstanding, replied, "If Cuthbert becomes troublesome, eliminate him." It was the kind of dark humor that kept spies alive. When she finally crossed into Spain, frostbitten and bleeding, she collapsed. Spanish authorities arrested her for illegal entry, but the American embassy quickly intervened. Virginia Hall had survived. Back in London, she was hailed as a hero, but fame was the last thing she wanted. She begged to return to France. Her superiors refused, fearing her limp made her too recognizable. So she found another way. By 1944, the Americans had created their own version of the SOE, the Office of Strategic Services, or OSS, the forerunner to the CIA. When OSS Director William Donovan needed an expert to coordinate French resistance operations ahead of the Allied invasion, he knew exactly who to call. This time, Virginia returned to France under deep cover, disguised as an elderly peasant woman. She dyed her hair gray, rubbed dirt into her face, and learned to shuffle instead of limp. Her mission: arm and unite the fractured resistance groups in central France before D-Day. Operating under the alias Marcel Montaigne, she set up radio operations in barns and attics, transmitting intelligence to Allied command. Over the next few months, she built one of the most effective resistance networks in all of France. She arranged 27 parachute drops, supplied weapons to hundreds of fighters, and coordinated guerrilla attacks that destroyed bridges, rail lines, and communication posts, crippling German reinforcements as the Allies landed in Normandy. At one point, she led over 500 resistance fighters in direct operations against the Germans, despite the fact that few of them even knew her real name. By the time Paris was liberated in August 1944, the Gestapo's most wanted woman had outlasted them all. The Limping Lady had won. When the war ended, Virginia Hall vanished from the spotlight. She didn't write a memoir. She didn't seek fame. She simply went home. In September 1945, General William Donovan awarded her the Distinguished Service Cross, the highest honor a civilian could receive. She was the only woman in World War II to earn it. President Truman wanted to present the medal publicly at the White House. Virginia declined. "I'm still working," she said quietly. After the war, she joined the newly founded CIA, but the same barriers she'd fought before were still there. Men questioned her competence, overlooked her experience, and assigned her to clerical duties instead of fieldwork. Still, she served for over 15 years, helping prepare Europe's defenses during the Cold War. She married a fellow OSS officer, Paul Goylott, and eventually retired to a small farm in Maryland, the same state where she'd once dreamed of a diplomatic life that never came. On July 8, 1982, Virginia Hall passed away at age 76. Few outside intelligence circles even knew who she was. For decades, her story remained classified, her name erased from history. Only years later, as declassified documents emerged, did the world finally learn the truth that the most effective spy in occupied France, the woman Hitler's secret police feared above all others, had been an American woman with a wooden leg. Virginia Hall defied every expectation. She turned pain into power, rejection into resistance, and fear into freedom. And she proved that courage doesn't come from perfection, it comes from defiance. If you think this story was unbelievable, wait until you hear about Noor Inayat Khan, the Indian princess who became Britain's last wireless spy in Nazi Paris. A woman who refused to run, even when capture meant death.